Scattered across the southeastern United States is a legend, one that speaks of a species of creature that carries a horrible scent with it. Horror stories follow the creature and speak of individuals encountering disastrous situations after smelling the beast's foul scent. The history of this abomination is so clouded with mystery and terror that it becomes difficult to separate truth from fiction. This is the complete history of the Skunk Ape Cryptid. Before we begin with the story of Skunk Ape, let's clear up some confusion for those who are unaware to what a cryptid is. To put it simply, a cryptid is a species or unique animal that is said to exist in the wild, but typically has a very controversial and disputed existence. The most famous example of a cryptid is that of Bigfoot. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's begin with the origin of Skunk Ape. The start of Skunk Ape began with the Seminole people, a tribe primarily in the southeastern part of the United States that is also known as the Free Peoples. The Seminoles had a legend of a creature known as St. Jepjaki, which translates to, quote, tall man. According to this legend, St. Jepjaki were a species of humanoid hairy creatures that would prey upon humans. They were roughly 7 feet tall and would carry a disgusting odor of wet dog and rotting meat wherever they went. As far as the legend goes, there isn't much to go off of, and this seems to be a controversial supposed start to Skunk Ape in the cryptozoologist community. The other possible Skunk Ape origin starts in 1818 when a local newspaper around Apalachicola, Florida began to publish several news stories that spoke of a, quote, man-sized monkey. According to these reports, it stated that the creature was found to be stalking fishermen as well as stealing their catches. So from this we can see that the story of Skunk Ape has been rooted deep in Florida history. Cut over 100 years later, and the Skunk Ape mythos had begun to disappear from the public. Legends of the creature were becoming dated, and it seemed as if the creature's story was nothing more than newspaper propaganda. This was until the year of 1929, when a man named Richard Clyde Perky would spark a supposed encounter with a skunk ape. You see, Mr. Perky built a fishing lodge on Sugarloaf Key, an island off the coast of mainland Florida. Despite the beautiful beaches and picturesque location, there was a big issue that needed to be addressed with his lodge, and that was mosquitoes. The mosquitoes were driving fishermen crazy, and it was making it difficult to turn a profit as so many of them were being driven off by the swarms of bloodsuckers. So, to combat this, he built what is known as a bat tower. The bats would live within the structure, and at night they'd take flight and eat the mosquitoes around the area. On the 4th day since the bat tower's creation, an anonymous man was tasked with keeping an eye on the tower to see if bats had begun to live in it. Perky wanted to assume that his money was being spent on something useful. According to this anonymous individual, at some point that night while the bats were darting in and out of the tower, he watched a, quote, 8-foot-tall hairy ape emerge from the woods near the tower. The imposing creature approached the tower, and with incredible strength, it began to rock the tower back and forth. Then, just like that, it disappeared back within the trees. No one knows why a skunk ape would be interested in a bat tower, but we do know that this encounter is recorded as one of the first supposed sightings of the cryptid we know as Skunk Ape. Years passed since the Bat Tower incident, and Skunk Ape was still an obscure legend in the minds of some Florida citizens. Then, in 1942, another encounter would bring some traction to the legend of Skunk Ape. I covered this encounter in my video about America's Lost City, but I'll discuss it again here for anyone who hasn't seen it. It was on a dark night in Suwannee County, Florida, a town in the northern part of the state, that a man would supposedly encounter a skunk ape. As his pickup truck rolled down the night road, he saw a massive humanoid creature sprint out of the nearby brush. The figure then grabbed a hold of his truck and hitched a ride, standing upon the running board of the car. The man didn't dare exit his vehicle and remained in shock as he continued to drive down the road. To the man's happiness, the massive creature eventually hopped off a few minutes into the ride. After this rumored encounter, reports of skunk apes began to pop up all around the state of Florida. Many of these sightings came from an area known as Barden, which is a community within Putnam County, Florida. These rumors eventually spawned a creature that would come to be known as the Barden Booger, With such a silly name, no one would expect that this creature carries such a terrifying description. The Barden Booger is typically described as your regular skunk ape, with a horrible scent and ape-like stature. However, the difference lies in its size. Some reports describe the booger as standing around 10 feet tall, which is 3 feet larger than the previous skunk ape reports. This seems to be the only named skunk ape. The booger stands out among its colleagues, as locals to Barden and the surrounding areas claim the legendary creature is extremely important to the area's history. It gets even weirder, as some reports describe the booger as something completely different than a skunk ape, with some claiming that it looks more like a mammoth, and others claiming it looks more human than ape. The legend of the booger continues to get stranger, as most reports claim that the creature enjoys spending time by rivers and carries around a lantern wherever it goes. Most reports of this creature seem to be more whimsical and silly in nature, a sharp contrast to the majority of skunk ape sightings. Skunk ape sightings continued to increase going into the mid-1900s. The creature was gaining more and more traction by the day, and it seemed that the skunk ape would be a household name with the likes of Bigfoot. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization logged hundreds of skunk ape sightings all around Florida from 1950 to 1970. One of the most famous skunk ape encounters would spark on January 9, 1974. On U.S. Route 27, a man named Richard Leaf Smith would hit a large object late at night. Richard's heart dropped as his car came to a stop, and he assumed he had struck a person. To his utter shock, an 8-foot-tall hairy ape would arise from the ground, and according to him, it let out an ear-piercing roar. Smith claimed that the creature charged his car, but before it could get to him, he put it in drive and sped on down the road. Most would write this encounter off as a hoax, but the strange part comes later on that same night. According to local police, several other reports would spring up that same night about a, quote, limping giant on Route 27. Police eventually arrived on scene and supposedly witnessed the massive creature limping alongside the road. But as it saw them arrive, it darted into the bush, never to be seen again. In the year of 1977, another man named Charles Stokeman, a former Vietnam War veteran, would give details about a prolonged encounter he had with the beast. According to Stokeman, he spotted a skunk ape on his Key Largo property. As Stokeman and his son were collecting bottles deep within the mangroves in his backyard, an enormous 8 to 9 foot skunk ape emerged. According to Stokeman, the beast had massive shoulders and smelt like wet dog. Both of them then ran back into their home and waited out the massive creature. In the following days, the Stokeman family would clear the mangroves from behind their home in order to deter any future visits from the beast. But in the following nights, the skunk ape would re-emerge and continue to harass the family. Despite their best efforts, the beast would not leave them alone, so Stokeman took to the sheriff's office to ask for some help. Many would consider this story to be simply a man hoping for some publicity or attention, but according to the police officers who visited the Stokeman property, the whole family was deathly afraid of something. The officers would not locate any signs of the beast while conducting a search of the area, but a scar was left in the Stokeman family for some time to come. Also occurring in the 1970s was the Hugh Paul Knuckles Skunk Ape Act, a bill that was actually passed by the House Criminal Justice Committee of Tallahassee, Florida, which would make it illegal for anyone to own or harm any, quote, anthropoid or humanoid animal which is native to Florida, popularly known as skunk ape, end quote. This bill was never passed any further, but the fact that it made it past the local committee speaks to the sheer popularity and legends surrounding the cryptid. In the late evening of July 8, 2000, a man named Dave Shealy would capture footage of a supposed skunk ape. Shealy was no stranger to the beast prior to this, as while he was a child, Shealy, his father, and his brother would spot one of the legendary beasts while deer hunting. Ever since that day, Shealy made it his goal to locate more information on the beast and capture another encounter, but this time do it while he was prepared. In the year of 2000, that day would arrive. In an unassuming open-land swamp, Shealy would record one of the most famous supposed skunk ape encounters, pictured now on screen. With most cryptid encounters, this footage is highly debated, with some pointing out how much the camera shakes or how the beast doesn't size up to other skunk ape descriptions, which put it at 7 to 8 feet tall. Many have also pointed out how the creature seems to look more like a man walking around in a suit. Despite the controversy surrounding the video, Sheely stands by it to this day. According to him, an area like the Everglades, which has faster rates of decomposition, leads to a lack of evidence and causes the National Park Service to not find any skunk ape remains. Either way, this footage has been one of the most debated topics in the skunk ape community. That same year, in December of 2000, another crucial piece to the skunk ape mythos would arrive. The Saratoga Police Department received 2 anonymous pictures and a letter from an unknown woman. In the letter, the woman expresses her concern at her recent encounter with a large ape-like beast in her backyard. The letter started as so, quote, "Enclosed, please find some pictures I took. My husband thinks it's an orangutan. Is someone missing an orangutan?" The woman stated that in her days leading up to this picture, the beast had been responsible with stealing fruit from her front porch. On the 3rd day of this event, she decided to see what was going on. According to the letters, the woman continually heard a whoomp sound from outside her home, and as she stepped out with her camera, she quickly snapped 2 photos of her yard where she could hear the sounds. The beast then turned and disappeared into the forest, likely spooked by the flash of the camera. As we can see in her pictures, assuming they aren't fake, the woman had encountered a massive, darkly colored ape-like creature that perfectly lines up with the descriptions of skunk ape. Furthermore, the woman never mentioned anything about skunk ape in her letters, and truly seemed to be confused as to what the creature may be. The woman also reported an awful smell that seemed to follow the beast that lingered in the area well after its disappearance. These photos seem to be one of the most famous skunk ape pictures of all time. Most articles about skunk ape will take the time to point out the existence of these 2 photographs. Some claim that a man named Justin Arnold, a famous Bigfoot hoaxer, was the mind behind these pictures, as he lived in a similar area and had the means of creating such a picture in his backyard. The evidence for both the photograph being real and the photograph being faked is very paper thin in my opinion, as neither side has presented any real concrete evidence from what I can find. Either way, there's no denying real or fake, these pictures are incredibly terrifying. In present day, skunk ape has slightly regressed in the eye of the public, with Bigfoot truly seen as a kingpin of the cryptid community, and other famous cryptids such as Mothman and the Jersey Devil taking a lot of the more recent spotlight from what I could find. However, skunk ape still has its loyal following, mainly down south. While most of the evidence surrounding skunk ape is highly debated, its influence and legend has undoubtedly made a mark. Years of skunk ape encounters and stories have created a unique take on the creature, where calling it a southern Bigfoot simply doesn't do it justice. I've thoroughly enjoyed diving into the wild world of the skunk ape community, and I hope you've enjoyed looking at the history along with me. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. Also, please let me know if there are any other cryptids you'd like me to cover. I know this video is a bit of a jump from my typical ones, so I hope that it was still enjoyable to you. Have a great day. Goodbye.